Hello, my name is Neil Leach, and I want to offer you some reflections today on the theme of AI and the limits of human creativity. At the moment, this is based on some of the research that I've been doing recently. I've just completed a manuscript on the applications of AI for architecture, and I'm about to embark on 2 further books on that same theme for which I have contracts. I'm showing you here an example of the kind of work that's emerging out of architecture quite recently. This is the use of cycle GANs, which is a form of two unpaired data sets which are being used, a study of the Sagrada Familia. What I want to argue today basically is that we need to revise our approach towards AI. We have to understand that AI is capable of far exceeding the capacity of human beings and of being far more creative than human beings. For example, if we take the debate between Elon Musk and Jack Ma, where Jack Ma was claiming there can't be anything that is more smarter than human beings, I'm firmly on the side of Elon Musk. Personally, I believe that AI has the capacity to be far more intelligent than human beings at a level that we can't even imagine. We won't even be able to comprehend the sheer intelligence that AI has. One example to illustrate this would be, for example, AlphaGo Zero, the machine that was developed by DeepMind in London which taught itself to play Go without any prior knowledge. That itself is astonishing. It was not given the rules of Go and let it learn the rules of Go by reinforcement learning. But what was even more astonishing was the speed at which it could operate. AlphaGo played 3.9 million games of Go in the space of 3 days. That amounts to 20 games of Go per second. Now, I'm not saying that intelligence is a question of speed, not at all. But the sheer capacity for AI to operate at that level just points towards its potential. I also would claim that people who view AI in terms of the generation of art or architecture, who think that it is incapable of being creative, that all it ever does is to kind of repeat the same, that all it can do is some form of imitation, are really completely wrong. So the question is not so much perhaps how AI can be creative, but how creative can be AI. The idea about the creativity of computation was first raised by Ada Lovelace, who collaborated with Charles Babbage on the development of the analytic engine. In fact, she has been described as the first proto-programmer. Although the analytical engine was not built, she envisioned what it might be able to do. And as the daughter of the poet Lord Byron, she speaks about it in a very poetic way. The analytical engine weaves algebraic patterns, just as the Jacquard loom weaves flowers and leaves. But importantly, she claims that it has no capacity, no pretensions whatsoever to originate anything. It cannot do anything that it is not programmed to do. And that in many ways has been echoed more recently by the Japanese computational architect Makoto Sei Watanabe, who comments, machines are better than people at solving complex problems with many intertwined conditions. In that realm, people are no match for machines. But people are the only ones who can create an image that does not yet exist. Machines do not have dreams. Well, that is clearly wrong. As we know from style GANs, an AI is quite capable of hallucinating images of people who do not exist. In fact, there's a website you can go to, This Person Does Not Exist, where every time you refresh your browser, in a fraction of a second, it can generate an image of somebody that does not yet exist. And the same goes for architecture. This is a study done by XCool, based in Shenzhen in China, where they hallucinate possible buildings that do not yet exist. In fact, they also had a website up for a while, This Building Does Not Exist, where you could literally generate these new forms of building. The question to my mind is really, whether human beings are that creative. And my view of personally of the way that culture propagates itself is that it's based on a form of replication or imitation. When you think about memes, when you think about the catchphrases or popular trends, we can see that culture spreads through a form of imitation. Things catch on. You copy other people. That's how culture propagates it. And this is one of the central themes of my book, Camouflage, where I explore the possibility of how creativity itself is based on some form of imitation. And indeed, Adorno comments, the human is indissolubly linked with imitation. A human being becomes human at all by imitating other human beings. To be human is to imitate. And that certainly is, in many cases, often the case in architecture, where architects are inspired by something outside that they absorb and they produce in their own design. The example of, for example, of on the left-hand side, Jorn Knutsen's sketch of the Sydney Opera House was inspired by the sails of yachts in the harbour of Sydney. I like to think of architecture as being a bit like jazz. There is a background condition that you build off and go back to. If, for example, you were to produce a building that looked like a pineapple, it would be dismissed. That's not architecture. But if you do a building that's kind of vaguely similar to the work of Zaha Hadid, Reb Koolhaas, Herzog de Meuron, Norman Foster, and so on, but not the same, that is architecture. Of course, there are some who are kind of game changers with the field. Frank Gehry's design for the Guggenheim in Bilbao was a game changer in many ways for architecture. But what is interesting is that he replicates his own architecture in his later work. On the right-hand side, the Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles. It's almost like we can see human beings as being constrained in their movements, like the pieces on a chessboard. The question to my mind then is whether AI can be more creative than human beings. One of the comments made by Alan Turing is that he envisages the possibility of AI, of computers composing sonnets. But the important point he makes, though, is that maybe the only other, that maybe machines would be more capable of appreciating a sonnet that was produced by a machine. That is set in perspective by the game of AlphaGo, the game of Go between AlphaGo, produced by DeepMind in London, and Lee Sedol, the Korean Go master, that took place in 2016. A match that everybody thought that Lee Sedol was bound to win. What was interesting about this particular match was that there were a series of what were called slack moves by the experts, moves whose relevance did not seem so obvious until a few moves later, when the strategic brilliance of those moves became obvious. And none more so than in game 2, the famous move 37, when AlphaGo came up with a move that most people thought was a mistake. Indeed, apparently Lee Sedol, a smile started coming over his face when he thought it was a computer glitch. That smile soon evaporated when he realized the sheer brilliance of this move. And it was a move that's forever changed the game of Go. And the question is not so much whether AlphaGo could be creative, because it's very clear that it can be creative, but the way in which it kind of overshadows human creativity. AlphaGo showed us that human moves, that the moves humans may have thought are creative, were actually conventional. Similarly, in the realm of architecture, we've discovered that the application of AI in the design of buildings can come up with surprising moves. This is a screenshot of a discussion going on over the summer in Alpha Digital Futures between Wan Yu He on the top right, X-Cool in Shenzhen, and Hovard Hoekler on the bottom left-hand side of Spacemaker AI in Oslo, Norway, the two leading developers of AI tools for the office of the future. And what they found is that actually AI can often come up with suggestions, solutions that no architect would have thought about. In fact, in many ways, they appear to be sort of totally counterintuitive. There was one particular solution that it came up with that all the experienced and the architects in the room could never have thought about themselves. So what we're finding now is that increasingly, even the progressive architects are exploring the possibilities of AI to produce new designs. Not only architects like Tom Main of Morphosis, the Pritzker Prize winner based in LA, but also Korb Himmelblau, whose work I'm showing here, Deep Himmelblau, the practice based in Vienna, Austria, of opening up the possibility of how AI can bring about a new set of designs. My view then is that we need to step back and accept the possibility of what I call a second Copernican revolution. Just as Copernicus has pointed out that the universe does not revolve around the Earth, we human beings need to recognize our own limitations. AI, in my view, can be way more capable than humans. We are not the center of the universe. The question, though, perhaps is not so much AI versus humans, but the possibility of seeing AI as a way of enhancing humans, AI as a form of extended intelligence, AI as a form of news. We can see it, therefore, as a kind of prosthesis that extends the capacity of human beings. Indeed, Michael Hansmeyer refers to it as a form of muse, a partner in design that can expand the human imagination. Let me finish then with some further work by Korb Himmelblau exploring the possibility of AI. What seemed to be very obvious is that we are going through an AI design revolution in architecture. AI is opening up all sorts of possibilities and showing us what architectural design could be, expanding the possibilities, the limitations of human biases, and opening architecture up to a new chapter. We need to be receptive to AI, we need to be aware of its abilities, and we need to be aware of how it can enhance architectural debates in the future. Thank you.